Greetings, anatomy fans. I am Melissa Mahalik. This is my lovely assistant, Napoleon Bonapartes. And we are somatic-anatomy.com, which you probably know if you're watching this, but I kind of felt I just needed to say it anyway. So today we are going to talk about the rotator cuff. We're going to talk about how people get rotator cuff injuries, the anatomical reasons they get rotator cuff injuries, and some do's and don'ts for working with the area. So a lot of which work for all kinds of shoulder pain, so I think you're gonna get a lot out of this. Are you ready? Oh, good. So what a rotator cuff injury is, usually when you have a rotator cuff tear, it is the top of the four muscles of the rotator cuff. So you have, here's my shoulder here. Okay, my shoulder's gonna make a starring show here. So follow along in your anatomy books, which, you know, you have a head, you have arms, legs, a chest, etc. You are carrying your anatomy book with you everywhere you go. Keep that in mind. It's not cheating if you've got it with you at all times. So, a quick rundown of the bony landmarks of the shoulder. So here you've got this kind of round thing. If I just relax my arm here, let it roll back and forth, I can feel this thing rotating back and forth underneath. That is the head of my humerus bone. So let me bring Boney over. There. So this is what it looks like naked right here. If you go up just a little bit, boop, this is, you can feel it on yourself, it's this flat space up here. This is called the acromion process. That's acro, as in acrobat, or as in the Acropolis in Greece. It means high. So this is the high point of the shoulder. Now, if you come along the front, you will start finding your collarbone. And you will notice that your collarbone actually attaches to your acromion process right here. This is actually a joint called the acromioclavicular joint. And if you keep going in towards your sternum, you'll find that your clavicle hits your sternum, and it's called the sternoclavicular joint. So there are in fact three joints in your shoulder girdle: the sternoclavicular joint, the acromioclavicular joint, and the glenohumeral joint. So the gleno comes from this kind of socket-shaped scoop right here in your shoulder blade. It's called glenoid because glenoid is, I believe it's Greek for socket-shaped, which is not super helpful, but what you gonna do? So glenoid fossa humerus, glenohumeral joint, which this is the joint we usually think of as the shoulder. If you keep going past your acromion process around the back, you will find what feels like a second collarbone in back. That's actually the spine of your scapula. You can go around there. You can find, ooh, that feels good. You can find the medial border. Medial is toward the midline. Medial border of your scapula. You can go all the way down. You can find the inferior angle, the bottom point. Inferior meaning away from the head, superior meaning above or towards the head. You've got your lateral edge of the scapula, and then there you are back at your glenohumeral joint again. So that's our quick tour of the bones of the shoulder. Now, the major muscle that gets torn in rotator cuff injuries is, and I'm going to use my high-tech camera work here. Yeah, I kind of do always film like this. Sorry. So right up here, we have the spine of the scapula, and you'll actually notice that there is some space up at the spine of the scapula. If you find the spine of your own scapula and you move up a little bit, you'll find there's a little space in there, and there's a muscle. And if you just start gently lifting your arm out to the side, you'll find that muscle is going to move under your fingers. This muscle is called the supraspinatus muscle. That supra as in superior, as in above. Remember, inferior angle of the scapula. So this is superior to the spine of the scapula, so supraspinatus. Sometimes those words really do make sense. So here's the deal with the supraspinatus. The supraspinatus comes It lives here in the supraspinous fossa, and it comes underneath your acromion process and lands on the head of your humerus, right there, this bump. Now, all right, that's all very fine and well, except that what happens when I raise my arm overhead? If this scapula, if the shoulder blade isn't moving, I'm going to pinch hell out of my finger. I mean, my supraspinatus. So what happens with supraspinatus injuries is usually people raise their arms up, and if the shoulder blades don't rotate properly and get up out of the way, then what will happen is the humerus will bonk into the acromion process, and it's going to squash the hell out of your supraspinatus. So if you can put your fingers back here on the spine of your scapula, you can feel how it moves, and this line starts pointing up as your arm goes overhead, unless you have rotator cuff injury, frozen shoulder, etc. So it's really, really important to make sure the shoulder blades can rotate upwards. This is the anatomical reason for most people getting rotator cuff injuries, because for some reason or other, this scapula is not rotating. Now, Boney has some major shoulder issues because you'll notice his scapula is actually nailed to his rib cage, so he's kind of buggered. He doesn't reach overhead very often. What can you say? It really puts a crimp in his performances some nights. But what you gonna do? You work with what you got. So, just about anybody active can end up with a supraspinatus issue. I'm just going to stay right here. Because anytime you're going to reach over your head, if you reach over your head and your shoulder blade doesn't rotate with you, you got problems. So you're going to see it a lot in active people, especially people who have any sort of reaching over the head. Tennis, rock climbing, whitewater kayaking. You can certainly see it in golf, because this weird external rotation that happens when you swing. Yeah, I don't actually golf, so I'm thinking that's a golf swing, but if you do golf, let me know about how a proper golf swing looks, because I bet you it's still rotator cuff dangerous. And the other thing is that older folks don't have to be super active to tear the rotator cuff, because as you get older, and especially if you're not active, then things start getting wobbly and weak, and it gets really easy to tear muscles and other important things like ligaments and break bones just by something really basic, just by falling over. Maybe not even a particularly bad fall. It's just like, oh, I fell over. Okay, now my shoulder doesn't work. That sucks. So that's something to keep an eye on if you have older clients. Make sure that they have good, strong shoulder mechanics, rotating shoulder blades, and strong muscles all around their shoulders, all the way down to the feet. Because your shoulders are supported by your rib cage, which is supported by your spine, which is supported by your pelvis, which is supported by your hip joints, which is supported by your femur bones, which is supported by your knee joints, which is supported by your lower legs, which is supported by your feet, which is supported by the ground. It's a thing that happens. Keep that in mind. It's really, really important. So things to do. Do strengthen your rotator cuff muscles. The classic exercise, of course, being external. It's just not enough room here. Excuse me, Bonnie. Here we go, is, I don't have a band, I do have a towel. External rotation. Pretend this is a band and this arm is actually still. There we go. And the important thing with external rotation is to make sure that your humerus is pretty much straight up and down, because your arm's going to want to do in and out, because that's just much easier. You want to make sure it's just going in and out. Sometimes you want the band to be here. Sometimes you want the band to be here. Boney, we're holding it. Then I could pull in, pull in, pull in. You also want to work shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, shoulder flexion, and shoulder abduction. All these things are going to be really important for stabilizing your shoulder girdle and your humeral head in the socket. So flexion, extension, flexion, abduction, and rotation in as many ranges of motion as you possibly can. So if you have somebody with rotator cuff issues, one great thing to do is use the physical therapy exercises in your sessions, because you know that your client is not going to do them as well without you there to make sure that they are staying on form. Plus, you learn some great exercises. It's a fantastic way to learn. Plus, you're helping to support that physical therapist, and if you guys can communicate back and forth, not only is it really helpful for your client, but hey, you guys might get some more business passed back and forth, which honestly is always kind of a nice thing. If you know you can work with that physical therapist and they know they can work with you, everybody's much happier. You just want to be really, really particular about form. Like, you can support your clients' recovery much better by checking their form and making sure that they're doing their exercises correctly outside the physical therapist's office. So everybody's going to win. Again, you learn some cool exercises, your client gets extra support, because sometimes you just need somebody to watch you and make sure that your elbows stay in the right place. Really, that's all you need. The major thing not to do is put a lot of weight on that shoulder. Don't do big weightlifting. Don't even do big weights for your external and internal rotation, because what's going to happen is as you lift heavier and heavier weights, the bigger muscles around here, your biceps, your deltoids, all these other guys are going to start taking over, and your rotator cuff will not get strengthened. The whole point of the rotator cuff is to be small, local, and do fine motor adjustments to the head of the humerus. So make sure that it's doing its small, local, fine motor adjustment work instead of doing the big, strong, heavy lifting things. That's for different muscles. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something from this. I get a huge bang out of the rotator cuff and shoulder issues in general, because I've got a ton of shoulder issues myself. I have had all kinds of tendinitis. I have subluxated my shoulder. That's a mild dislocation, just so you know, and it was mildly dislocated for about 2 years, until a friend of mine took pity on me and helped me raise my arm above my shoulder, putting it back in place. Yeah, that's a story. So if you are enjoying this, then I hope you will stay on the mailing list and keep getting wonderful stuff, because we always have something cool going on. If you have not yet joined the Experiential Anatomy Party on Facebook, check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there too. It's also a great place to discuss things with other anatomy fans and hear other people's opinions and experiences. So enjoy your anatomy. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you online and off.